I just want to talk about UFC 234 and how that card went. A lot of people really hated it right from the start. And there we go. And just because it was a little bit more shallow of a card, I suppose, which, people were asking at the press conference before Whitaker even pulled out. And, they were asking Dana at the press conference, oh, there's only 2 real fights on this card. Like you're expecting people to pay $65 for it, whatever. And all that, which I kind of understand. If you're paying for it, of course, I understand. But I mean, me personally, I stream fights. So, I mean, I'm as big of a fan as you'll find, but I don't pay for the cards. I don't really think you should have to unless you buy tickets to go to an event. These fighters are going to get paid the same regardless, whether I pay money or not. So I stream them. And because of the fact that I stream them, I didn't mind it. I thought, this isn't really that bad at all. It's really more or less just like a fight night that happens in like China, like Francis Ngannou versus Curtis Blades, the second fight they had, or like the card where Tyron Woodley fought Dong Young Kim, a card like that. That's just over in China or wherever. It's just not that big of a card. That's what I thought of it like. So I was, of course, excited to watch it. I know this is a little late, but I wasn't able to watch them live because I missed some stuff, like media stuff leading up to UFC 234. So I didn't watch them live, and I watched the replay. I just got done watching the replay, and I got a few things to say about it. Jonathan Martinez versus Wolle Buren, that was an all right fight. I mean, Jonathan Martinez, the way he throws his punches, I'm sure no one even watched this fight because it was on Fight Pass. But the way he punches, it kind of reminds me of Al Quinto a little bit. The way he I don't know, the way he folds his fist over when he throws a cross. His boxing looked pretty good. His scrambles were great. He actually swept Bourne quite a few times. He swept him 3 or 4 times on the ground, which was really impressive. You don't usually see that many sweeps in a few fights in a row, let alone one fight. I think he swept him 4 times. I know he did at least 3. He was a man of few words. I like him. I'm a fan now. Next fight, Jalen Turner versus Kalin Potter. Jalen Turner made his UFC debut against Vicente Luque a couple months ago at welterweight, and he's naturally a lightweight. He made his debut at welterweight. No one expected him to win that fight, and of course he didn't. Vicente Luque is a fucking animal. The dude KOs so many, not just knocks out, but KOs so many people, and he's got such good submissions, especially like front chokes, like anacondas and darces, stuff like that. So can't really expect him to win that fight. That brought his record to 7-4, and then he fought Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt Kalin Potter, native to Australia, making his UFC debut, who had finished 16 of his 17 wins. And Jalen Turner, his boxing looks so good. He had a couple nice kicks. His hands just look so swift and fluent, like he's supposed to be there. He's a very, very long, lanky. Excuse me. He's a very long, lanky guy. And you can tell he's very athletic and he hits hard. And he was pretty accurate with his hands. I was very impressed with him. I was very excited to see him again because I knew when he debuted, I was like, a black guy that's like 6'3" and lanky like that. Like, he's going to be a really good athlete. I bet you he hits hard. As long as he learns some technique, he's going to be great. And, he's only 23 years old. He's only like a year older than me. And I think he's got a very bright future. The only thing that worries me a little bit, all 4 of his losses are knockouts. I just hope his chin holds up the rest of his career. But I was very excited to see he did very, very well. The next fight, bantamweight. This was a great fight. Kyung Ho Kang versus Hiroto Ishihara. Oh man, this fight was amazing. It was just it was like, does anybody remember when John Lineker fought Francisco Rivera? That fight, that was just a fucking slugfest until Lineker caught Rivera in a guillotine. Well, that was kind of like this fight. It's the same weight class and everything, except between two Asians. And Kyung Ho Kong ended up getting a rear naked choke second away from 4 minutes in. But it was a barn burn. This fight was amazing. I love Kyung Ho Kong. I was very upset that, like when Chan Sung Jung did, like Do Ho Choi is going to have to do, I believe he started now. In South Korea, you have to serve a mandatory 2-year sentence in the military. Dong Young Kim had done his earlier on. So that's why we never had to, see a 2-3 year break from him. But Chan Sung Jung, that's why he had that 3.5 year break, 4 year break, because he had to go in the military. Kyung Ho Kong, same thing. He had to go in the military. Now he's done. I'm so glad he's back. I like Ishihara too. He's a good fighter, but man, this was a great fight. If you didn't see it, I suggest you go back and watch it. Go to MMAversus.com or watchwrestling.ac or MMA like sideways core.com. You can watch all these fights. The next fight, another one that I was really excited for, Kai Kara France versus Rulian Paiva. Well, I'll start out by saying I was really, really hoping Kai Kara France came to the UFC after his season on The Ultimate Fighter. That season they created around Demetrius Johnson. He was on it. He did pretty well. He's got great Muay Thai. I mean, kind of like MMA Muay Thai because he doesn't stand straight up. He bobs and weaves. He's got great footwork. He kind of reminds me of a flyweight version of TJ Dillashaw a little bit. He's got pretty good wrestling. He's well-rounded. And, he showed up. He got his second win in the UFC. He's only won 2 decisions so far. He does hit pretty hard. He can knock you out. He does have power. But it don't bother me any. 2 decisions, that just means I get to watch more of a fight. I was very excited to see that. And Paiva, actually, he looked like he was a weight class above. He's a pretty big dude. I mean, he's 4 inches taller. But it didn't – whatever punches Kai landed – he landed him and he'd land combinations and he'd get out. Whatever Paiva landed, I wouldn't say it hurt Kai because it didn't. It didn't hurt him. But when he did crack him good, it would snap Kai's head back. So I could tell that he didn't have the same power that Paiva did. But it didn't matter. It worked out. He got the decision. I'm very, very happy he did because I'm a huge, huge Kai Kara France fan. I've been a huge fan since he was on The Ultimate Fighter. I think he is just fucking incredible. I love that kid. Next fight in the featherweight division was Shane Young versus Austin Arnett. This is another fight I was pretty impressed with because Austin Arnett, I believe he was 1-2 in the UFC before this. Let's see. Yeah, 1-2 in the UFC. He lost on the Contender Series and he came to the UFC anyway. Lost his first 2 fights and then he won a decision. Then his next fight was Shane Young. I could tell either he had really, really improved or he's a lot more comfortable in the UFC now, which, ignorant me, I haven't seen any of his fights outside of the UFC as of yet anyways. So I'm going to say it's a little bit of both because he is 27 years old, so obviously he's still improving. But his hands look great. I think he looked a lot like Max Holloway, except not as good, of course. The way he throws his punches, the way he uses his footwork and everything. He looked a lot like Max Holloway, except just not quite as good. And Shane Young, he just walked through everything, landed more punches. He looked great. I've always been pretty big on Shane Young. Ever since he made his debut in the UFC against Alexander Volkanovski, I knew that he was going to be pretty good. I knew that he was going to be a force to be reckoned with at some point in the future. The kid's only 25 years old right now. He's I thought that they both looked very good in this fight. Yeah, that's what I'll say about that. Devontae Smith versus Donghyun Ma. Firstly, I'd like to say Donghyun Ma, he used to be referred to as Donghyun Kim. There used to be 2 Donghyun Kims. And it was confusing. And I seen his name and I was like, Donghyun Ma. And I was like, that looks a lot like that other guy that calls himself Donghyun Kim. And I looked it up and it's the same guy. I'm assuming he changed the last name to Ma because, we already have a Donghyun Kim and it's kind of confusing. He's also South Korean, of course. But Devontae Smith, man, oh my God, this kid is good. Like, this kid is so good. Like, he's so fluent with his striking, and he hits so hard. I liked his post-fight interview. He was funny. He's he cracked me up a little bit. But I'm very excited to see what he has this show. I'm very excited to see what he has to show in the future. King Cage, like, this kid is good. He's only 25 as well. He'll turn 26 on July 30th. He's 10-1. He's got 9 knockout wins. You know, his only loss is a TKO to Gunther, who was on the Ultimate Fighter undefeated. And it was in the middle of the 3rd round. You know how tough John Gunther is? If you watch that season of The Ultimate Fighter, you see how tough he got his ass completely whipped like 2 or 3 times in those fights that they showed leading up to his first fight against Joe Giannetti. You seen him getting smashed, and he came back and ended up winning. Like, he's so tough. So I'm assuming Devontae Smith probably whipped his ass and then too tired because he blew his wad and then, ended up getting finished. That's my assumption. I didn't see that fight, though. Ignorant me. Again, I can't talk on it. That's my assumption. That's my guess. But Devontae Smith, yeah, big things for that kid in the future. He's good. Light heavyweight, Jimmy Crute versus Sam Alvey. Have you ever heard of Jimmy fucking Crute? Yeah, Jim Crute, he looked great. He looked really good. Sam Alvey didn't look bad. He got hurt badly by that. I don't remember he got hurt so bad by that strike. He was out of it for a second, and then Crute just decides to step away for a second, and then, he comes back and ends up pounding on him. And I didn't argue the stoppage initially as soon as he's like, okay, stop. But then literally a millisecond later, Then literally a millisecond later, Sam Alvey standing up. What the fuck? Why did you stop it? Are you kidding me? I'm talking to you. I gave you a thumbs up, which he did. You watch the replay. Everything is, evident of that. Jimmy Crute, after he really hurt him, he already walked away. After Sam Alvey, when he started pounding on him again, after he walked away, after he came back over to him and started hitting him, Alvey was planted flat on the mat. He was flat. He was completely flat on the mat when he started hitting him. Okay? Then, after he continued to hit him, Sam Alvey got in bottom turtle position, which is kind of like a fetal position when you're on your knees. It's a wrestling term. So when you go from complete prone to a turtle position when you're getting hit, I think that means that you're okay. I think that means that you can continue to fight as of right the second anyways. Maybe another shot would have landed really hard right behind his ear and then he would have been out. Who knows? But you know what? Every fighter deserves that chance. And Sam Alvey has said that Mark Goddard has stopped his fight early before too. I'm assuming that's the Lil Nog fight because that's the only fight I can think of off the top of my head that he got finished in by strikes anyways. And Sam Alvey's such a nice guy. Smiling Sam Alvey. That's him. That's his character. That's who he is as a person. He's a great dude. He's always so jolly and joyful. When I seen how pissed off he was, I really realized that Mark Goddard fucked up. Because if you get a guy like Sam Alvey that mad at you, then you fucked up, man. He's got to be the nicest fighter out there, probably. Like, I felt bad for him. I think Jimmy Crute would have won anyways. But what's the need for the controversy, it's unfortunate, but, that's the fight game. You get refs like that. And another thing about that I have to say, Mark Goddard just has to be the king of early stoppages now, doesn't he? I'll just leave that there. Women's flyweight fight between Montana Dolorosa and Nadia Kasim. Yeah, Montana looked great. Her jiu-jitsu is really good. Her wrestling is pretty good. She impressed me. Improved her UFC record to 3-0. I was impressed. A good fight for her. The bantamweight fight, Ricky Simone and Ronnie Yaya. No, this went a lot like I thought it was going to go. I really wished that it didn't. I really wanted Yaya to win because Ronnie Yaya is the first really elite of the elite jiu-jitsu guys that I ever started watching. He's the very first Damian Maia or Fabricio Verdun type grappler that I started watching in MMA. The first fight I ever seen him in, he got knocked out by Joseph Benavidez. And then, but I went back and I looked at his record and I was like, wow, he submitted Mark Hominick. He submitted Eddie Wineland. Or no. Did he beat Eddie Wineland? I don't remember. It was a long time ago when I watched that shit. But, he fought the best of the best, for a long time. And he still has continued to. And he's 11-3, now 11-4 in the UFC. But you take his first two UFC fights out of there. Or no. You take that fight against Chad Mendes, so 1-1. You take one of those fights out of there, he's 10-3 in the UFC out of his first two fights. After his first two fights, rather. I've always loved Ronnie Yaya. He's got great submissions. He really does. Oh yeah, he did beat Eddie Wineland. That's what I thought. But I didn't think that he would beat Simone because Simone has impressed me quite a bit in his last couple of fights. He beat Merab Dvalishvili, who's a pretty good fighter. He beat Montel Jackson, which neither of those guys are staples in the UFC. Neither of those guys have had more than 3 or 4 fights in the UFC. But I have seen each of those guys fight before, and they are good fighters. So, therefore, that being said, I didn't know whether he would beat Yaya or not. I didn't know whether Yaya would beat him or not. Of course, you don't know with any fight. Simone's only loss was by rear naked choke, but he's got really good wrestling and he's got good hands. I was surprised with Ronnie Yaya's stand-up, honestly. He does have a Muay Thai black belt. It might surprise a lot of people, but he does. But his stand-up last night, or Saturday, rather, looked a lot better than I ever remember it looking. He did very well on the feet. He even, I wouldn't say rocked him, but he did hurt Simone a couple times. He got rocked himself really bad in the first round too, and he didn't look better for the rest of the round. And I was just wishing, like, man, I've watched Yaya for so long. Please stop it. Just please stop it. I don't want him to get hurt. But no, he came back and he did very well. He did lose all 3 rounds. It was a good fight, though. Lando Venata versus Marcos Mariano. Or Mariano, rather. I'm sorry. This was an all right fight. When you start out looking at it, you see Marcos is 6-4. And you're like, oh, Lando's just going to blow through him. What the hell is this fight even made for? Well, when you listen to Dominic Cruz, you think about it. Dominic Cruz said he's probably like 25-4 with all these underground fights and amateur fights he probably never even heard of or seen or anything. It's like, that makes a lot of sense. And then I seen him on the feet. He looked good on the feet. He's athletic. He looked powerful. But on the ground, that's where he needs help. That's where he needs to work because Lando Venata got him in a Kimura with 5 seconds left, which it was beautiful. It really was. And he had good ground and pound leading up to it, too. But I'm so glad that Lando Venata finally got out of the funk that he's been in. Because after debuting against Tony Ferguson, which he did very well in that fight, but he got finished by a Darce choke in the second round. After that fight, he wheel kicks John Makdessi, which is unrealistically impressive because John Makdessi is 22-0 in professional kickboxing. He's a Taekwondo black belt, and he's a Shotokan karate black belt. This dude wheel kicked him and KO'd him with it. If that's not impressive, I don't know what is. That's like submitting Charles Oliveira for Anthony Pettis or for Michael Chiesa, or But after that, he's gone 0-2-2. His UFC record before Saturday night was 1-3-2. He had 2 draws and 2 losses in his last 4 fights before this. He finally comes out and fixes that. It's awesome. But it's not that he hasn't fought great fighters before, like David Tamer, Drakkar Klose, Bobby Green. Matt Frevola kind of surprised me too. He's actually a pretty good fighter. But, he got out of it finally, and he got a win. I'm very, very glad because Lando Venata, I'm telling you, keep paying attention to this kid. He is so good. Like I said, Kai Kara France kind of reminds me of a flyweight version of TJ Dillashaw. I think that Lando reminds me kind of a lightweight version of him. I really do. Just watch how each of those 2 fighters I named, Kai and Lando, Watch how they each switch stances while they're striking. Look at the strikes that they do throw. I mean, they just remind me of them. I can't say it any better than that. But then the main event was supposed to be the co-main event, but it's the main event in 3 rounds because they only had a day to, understand that they were going to be the main event, of course. The middleweight fight between Israel Adesanya and Anderson Silva. Now, going into this fight, even back when it first started out, I kind of worried about. I was like, man, this is going to be a boring fight, I think. Like, I've always thought one of my fantasy fights that I've always wanted to see is Lyoto Machida versus Anderson Silva. And the reason that didn't happen when Anderson was running middleweight and Lyoto was running light heavyweight is because Anderson is his good friend. And that was actually talked about, but Anderson shut the idea down immediately. Now, I think that fight would probably be boring too because I think both of them would hesitate to strike. But this fight wasn't boring whatsoever. Israel pushed the pace, and he struck him like he does pretty much anybody else. And Anderson, countered him. I do wish Anderson would have thrown a little bit more. But, dude, I'm not going to complain about this. Anderson showed us that, he's almost 44 years old. And he doesn't fight like a 44-year-old. His reactions were still there. His timing was still there. He got Israel to back up a couple times. He cracked him pretty good a couple times. It was a great fight. It was such a beautiful fight to me. It was such a beautiful performance by both of them. I was like, oh my God, Anderson Silva is still this good. Like, this is awesome. And it's not that, and a lot of people think, oh, Israel doesn't deserve a title shot after that. Oh, I wouldn't pick. I've seen someone comment on Facebook saying, I wouldn't bet on Israel against anyone after that fight. And it's like, are you kidding me? So what? Anderson Silva's out of his prime. He's still got, the only thing that's not the same about him is I haven't seen his killer instinct until last night. Actually, I seen it last night, and I seen it for a couple glimpses in the Bisping fight. But last night we seen his killer instinct, even though he couldn't do it. Israel's a fucking prodigy. Of course, he's probably not going to finish him with strikes. It's possible. But if he doesn't, it doesn't mean, he's not good. It was such a great fight between Anderson Silva is one of, if not the best striker in MMA history ever. And Israel, again, same thing. 75-5-1 in pro kickboxing, 32-0 in amateur kickboxing, 5-1 in pro boxing with one controversial decision loss. It was such a great, great fight. It lived up to everything that I thought it should have. I didn't want it to be finished because I wanted to see more of a fight. And I'm glad it wasn't. But, another thing I worried about was Anderson's chin. And I said that his chin isn't as good as it used to be. I said that in one of the articles I wrote. But I also said, well, you can't really say that because we never really knew what his chin was like because his head movement was always so elite. Israel cracked him quite a few times. A very accurate striker he is. And he cracked him a lot. And Anderson didn't even get wobbled. It was a great fight. It really was. It was amazing. I loved it. I loved every second of it. It was a good card. And I can't wait until UFC on ESPN 1 next weekend. I can't wait for it. It's going to be really, really fun. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm a new writer for MMABets.com and MMABets.se. That's bets with a Z, by the way. I write for MMAMotion.com, and I have my own page, The MMA Logic, on Facebook. If you can give all those a like, subscribe even, give this video a like, subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I'll be back with more. Thank you, guys.